United States presidents who do not know Jesse Jackson. Yesterday, I listened for several hours of 3 United States presidents who do not know Jesse Jackson. He maintained a tense relationship with the political order, not because the presidents were white or black, but the demands of our message, the demands of speaking for the least of these, those who were disinherited, the damned, the dispossessed, the disrespected, demanded not Democratic or Republican solutions, but demanded a consistent prophetic voice that at no point in time ever sold us out as a people. And it speaks volumes about who the Reverend Jesse Jackson was. 3 United States presidents.
Well, there you have it. Good morning and welcome to Black Press USA's morning show. This is where we bring you the headlines and the culture. And that was Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr. speaking on Saturday at the funeral or homegoing celebration of the Honorable Reverend Jesse Jackson. And, you know, he wasn't too happy with the presidents. I want to bring in our co-host, former Assembly member, and LA Commissioner Mike Davis. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
And so you heard Reverend Jesse Jackson Jr. say the 3 presidents didn't know his daddy. What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, it would be difficult to argue with someone's son who was with them day and night in terms of their own interpretation of us knowing him. So he has his own definition, his own experiences with his father, and perhaps none of us know his father as much as he did. So his point, I guess, is that there were some things that Jesse Jackson stood for that were not captured in the remarks of the presidents. But I do want to say that we do know who Jesse Jackson meant to us. He means something to each one of us. We do know generally he was a civil rights leader, and we know that he was talented beyond measure in terms of what he achieved. We know his story that he told us about. So no, we can't compete with his son who was with him day and night, but we all have an opinion of our experiences with Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Right. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed, although it took him a while to get to his point, but I enjoyed the stories that Bill Clinton had about Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Little Rock Nine and how he had to go and see Reverend Jesse Jackson speak in that auditorium as I think he was an attorney general at the time or and then when on another anniversary, he went back as governor and then invited the Reverend Jesse Jackson back to the governor's house, the same house that tried to disenfranchise and block the 9 from going to school, and how they thought that was such a moment to be having dinner in that house, and how they stayed and talked all night long. So I'm just saying you can't have memories about somebody if you didn't know them. Now, I'm not saying they were best friends.
Absolutely.
But I thought that there was some good stories that came out about Reverend Jesse Jackson from the presidents. And I mean, quite frankly, we know when Barack Obama ran for president, there was some, comments that the Reverend made about Barack Obama, that had people. So, I mean, I think that we all love Reverend Jesse Jackson. I don't know what that was. Orange G says, is he still mad because he didn't receive a pardon?
He didn't receive a pardon? Who didn't? Who did not?
Jesse Jackson Jr.
I see.
There's another conversation saying, why didn't Biden pardon him? So maybe he's mad about that.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Well, I'm sure he still has an opportunity to apply for a pardon. And oftentimes the pardons come on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. But I think it was pretty significant to have 3 sitting presidents.
Yes.
At a funeral for a civil rights leader. That was huge.
Right.
And I think that it shouldn't go overlooked or taken for granted that, his father meant that much, and the work and contributions that he made to our country were so important that three presidents, former presidents, felt it was worth pulling up, showing up, and speaking about his legacy.
Absolutely. And I think people in general in the African American community felt it was appropriate. When we look past not just their symbolism of showing up, but we look at the significance of the African American vote in the victory of each of those presidents, because without that, they would not have been president. And to that point, I think Isaiah Thomas really drew the line in clarity in terms of the work that Jesse Jackson had done in his first significant run. We again know Shirley Chisholm was the first one to run for president, but Jesse Jackson ran in such a way that he was able to go all the way through the process in terms of, as I had mentioned last week, he had a trailer in the back, and he had staff and chairman of his efforts. So he made a significant difference in his run for the presidency. So when we look at all those things, we see that the presidents, who all three were there, should have personally been there because of the role that the African American community played in their success.
Right, right. 100%. And Reverend Jesse Jackson contributed to a lot of that post civil rights. And so we continue to reflect on his legacy, gone, but definitely not forgotten. All right, chat, we got our morning poll. And so let's get to it. And it's all about immigration and Black labor tension. Now, the administration, the Trump administration, has surged ICE detention by 75% since 2025 and is using federal troops, as we know, for enforcement, citing the protection of American jobs. So the question becomes, does the administration's hardline immigration and mass deportation strategy help or hurt Black workers? And so option A, do you believe it helps? If you believe it helps, drop an A. If you believe it hurts, drop a B. And if you think it has no impact at all, drop a C. And let us know what you think about Trump's immigration policy. Does it hurt Black American workers? Drop an A. No, I mean, drop a B. Does it help? Drop an A. And if it's no impact at all, drop a C. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think when we look at it, and in terms of the decision that we're asked to make, it is clear that it is used as a split issue in terms of the African American community and the journey of other Americans. To what degree have we all been immigrants at one point or another? To what degree are African Americans or those of African influence also immigrants? But at the same time, is this experience what is stopping us from hiring African Americans? Really? So we can't hire African Americans because of our position on immigration? No, we can hire African Americans. We can hire them now. And immigration has nothing to do with hiring them. There's an underrepresentation of African Americans at many levels of government right now, today. And it is in many areas. You know, one big city has underrepresentation of Black engineers, another one, firefighters. And so we can focus on the need for inclusion, and it singularly alone is the reason why we have a problem with Black full employment. I don't buy that any other issue is the reason why. You can hire us if you want to, even in California.
So yours is C, no impact. You don't think it has an impact on Black American workers, right? You're saying there's no impact.
That white people can hire Black people if they want to. That's clear.
That's what you believe. Okay. So the chat is chatting and they're chiming in. Helen Brown, Michelle Madison, and Marion Robinson all say B. They think it hurts. It creates a police state atmosphere in our neighborhoods. That's one thing that it does. Right. And so they say it hurts. You know, Trump's immigration, it hurts Black American workers. And so there you have it. But keep chiming in, folks, and let us know if you think Trump's immigration policies help or hurt the Black American workers. Drop an A if you think. Well, Orange G says it's both A and B. It helps because some employers don't want to hire Black people, and it also hurts because white people want cheap labor. So I guess it depends on what white folk you go to.
Those are good points to be made in this discussion.
And so you guys can keep chiming in on that question. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But let's jump into some headlines where one of our Black Press affiliates, the Black Virginia News, is reporting on redistricting, a firestorm that's happening in Virginia as the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus has condemned the GOP-aligned mailer that used imagery of the KKK and Jim Crow to target Black voters regarding a redistricting matter. And so here you have GOP. Are they reading the room and understanding that we have moved past Jim Crow? Or are they letting us know that this is where we are right now? Mike?
Unfortunately, racism is inextricably tied to the African American experience in particular, but the American experience in general. And as I just stated, in terms of the ability to hire who you wish to hire, has nothing to do with immigration or any other subject you might want to bring up. Why is there a lack of hiring us? It has nothing to do with anything but a decision to be made. And so I feel that very same way as it relates to this issue as well.
Yeah, I just, it seems like we're going backwards. And I think this is why Black history is so important, because if you don't know history, you won't know where they're trying to take us, right? It's important that you know about slavery. It's important that you know about Reconstruction. It's important that you know about the Black codes. It's important that you know about Jim Crow, because if you don't know and you get that mailer in the mail, it's going to be foreign to you. You have to know these things. And that's why when we look at what's happening and we coming up upon this 250th anniversary, all of the things that I just mentioned are a part of that history. And so as we look at what the Trump administration is trying to paint moving into the celebration, it's critical and it is important that Black media jump into the conversation of 250 years. And this right here is a part of that history, whether, you know what I'm saying? And they might be using it to scare people, but we need to be talking about how this is a part of how white folks embed systemic racism in this country and why we have a lot of the problems that we have. And talk about it from that bird's eye view. Not that it's just insensitive and it's disrespectful, but how it plays a role into how some of these systems and these unfair practices in our country stem from that type of ideology.
Well, I agree that the Black press is a saving grace in terms of telling our story, and we must continue to tell it because we've not arrived at the level of equity that we would like to achieve. And in terms of diversity and inclusion, there still is a lot of work to be done. And so the Black press tells our story. And while we appreciate progress that has been made, we still have not come to the point where we are capable of making sure that the dream reaches more American citizens. And this is our overwhelming quest. This is our desire for those of us in government and those of us who are working in the public interest to make sure that there's accessibility to the benefits of being American citizens in every way. So that's what I believe.
Right. And even going back to talking about our poll and about if these immigration policies affect Black workers. Let's not forget that the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, they released that State of the Dream report warning that the Black recession is looming because of a 7.5 unemployment rate. So when we talk about Trump's immigration policies, I mean that unemployment rate 7.5 has nothing to do with immigrants. It has something to do directly with the Trump administration pulling federal jobs. It has something directly to do with the erasure of DEI. And so immigration has nothing to do with what the Trump
Absolutely.
administration has done to slash Black jobs in this country.
I could not agree more. And I think you're absolutely correct to bring up that poignant point of the other things that have been done in addition to the masquerade around this whole issue of immigration. The laying off of federal workers had nothing to do with immigration because those people who were laid off were from America. And so that was a part of the effort that the administration engaged in.
Let's talk something about something and you're familiar with because you are a professor at what college is it again?
California State University, Long Beach.
Yeah. So this one has to do something with high school students, but it's still relative. A new national survey of nearly 200,000 students find that fewer than 4 in 10 Black students say their school feels safe. And this is compared to more than half of white students. And while about 1 in 5 students overall worry about school safety, that number rises to about 1 in 4 for Black students. So researchers say the worries often stem from exposure to violence, concerns about weapons, and unequal discipline practices. So not only are we losing our jobs, but our young Black kids don't feel safe in school.
We find that the universities are a microscopic perspective of what's going on in the larger society. The racism we experience in the larger society also exists on the campus,
Right.
particularly as we related to African American males and their potential to achieve successfully and the way that they were treated in walking across campus. All these issues that we see and experience in the general society, unfortunately, some of those exist on the campus. And one might argue that this is where they learn it. This is where they practice it on those particular campuses. So while we fought to get what we got, we lost what we had when we look at the various choices of schools that minority students had to go to.
And I also want to point out too that this poll was conducted by a network of Black publishers known as Word and Black. And so when we talk about telling our stories, it's important that polling, when we do data polling, that we poll Black folks, because we know traditionally when we look at the Gallup poll or we
Yes.
see this NBC partnering with the PWI college, that the number of Black people that are polled is low. And so you really don't get an assessment of how Black folks are really feeling. But this poll that we just talked about with Black students and over 200,000 students were surveyed, we know that the highest percentage is people of color. And this also helps tells our stories. And that's why it's so important to encourage Black media to continue to do these polls. And hopefully they can partner with institutions, HBCUs, like, the Georgia HBCUs or the Louisiana HBCUs or, so forth, so that we know what Black America is feeling and we can tell you. And that's what one of the powers that the Black Press has.
Absolutely. And I agree. Data is so important to inform us on the decisions we need to make to improve the quality of life for our residents, particularly in the African American community, since many times we feel that there has been a lack of our voice and that we have not been included in some of these decisions that have been made because, as you have stated, we were not a part of those who have been polled. So the Black press has a critically important role in helping us solve society's problems.
Yeah, so shout out to Word and Black and all those Black publishers, and we will continue to amplify this important data that you have for America at large. Let's head to Mississippi, where the NAACP has issued an urgent demand to the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality to reschedule a public hearing set for today as Mississippians head to the polls to vote. Okay. So the hearing concerns a gas-fired permit for Elon Musk and his data center. So the conflict is the hearing is scheduled during the federal primary happening today. It's 3 hours away from affecting, the polling and people. So having people to decide, do I go to the hearing for my health in this data system, or do I go vote in my best interest? So this is being framed as a textbook example of environmental racism and a deliberate attempt to force Black residents to choose between their rights to vote and their right to clean air, putting them in a pickle.
That's correct. Absolutely. And unfortunately, our decision is going to have to be to vote.
Oh,
absolutely.
So not have clean air.
Well, we should have clean air, but we don't want to miss our right to vote and to weigh in.
But can't you do both? Can't we do both? Can we set a plan?
Both, fine.
Can we set a plan today? Go to the meeting.
We can, but just to pose the problem as it's discussed about the decision made to do both activities at the same time. And if there are some people who would get lost in the shuffle, then we want to comment on, if given a choice, how do we prioritize it?
Right.
Well, I want to ask a question to Mike, because see, y'all, and I'm saying the NAACP, I'm not currently a member, sure. But that was the role that the NAACP, more than just like writing the letter, the NAACP used to come up with strategy, right, to be more prepared for situations like this. This piece of legislation isn't something that just came out of nowhere. It was something that they were aware of, right? This move. So, is the NAACP more than, sounding the alarm? Are there strategies in the same way that they used the strategy for the Montgomery bus boycott with, Rosa Parks? Are there strategies? Are you all still coming up with strategies to help our communities in circumstances like this, right? Where they have to make a decision about, whether it's, okay, we're going to take this bus load in the morning to go to to vote, and, and then another bus load to go, and then we're going to switch it up, like something. I don't know what that really looks like, but there was a job that ended up more than just writing a letter. And, what are you all doing to help us in this moment in a meaningful way?
I think that decision-making is critically important. And on an everyday basis, we have to make decisions. And as you have suggested, strategy is also critically important. You mentioned the Montgomery bus boycott. There was such brilliant strategy there. And they were able to sustain their actions in such a way that it broke financially the backs of the Montgomery bus boycott, the transportation system. My point is that we can never forget to dedicate our time towards exploring and implementing strategy in decision making. Every day we have to make decisions, and we need to focus on decision making. So yes, you're absolutely right. The NAACP used to do it. We still do it. I see it, if we had a choice between the two, as sad as it is, I know Niel pointed it out to me, but that our right to vote is our top priority.
But see, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's just so. I think that the NAACP is doing its part by raising the alarm at what they're trying to do in Mississippi. But I think like the Black church has a role to play. She talked about, buses, souls to the polls. And so it's not just a effort. I think the NAACP is doing its job. But I think that even with the Montgomery boycott, it wasn't just the NAACP. You know what I'm saying? It took other organizations as well to do a job. So maybe it's the NAACP's job to raise the alarm on a national level, but maybe it's the Southern Law of Poverty that's supposed to do something too. Maybe it's the Black church that's supposed to make sure that you have, an opportunity to vote, and then we'll take you over to the hearing. So I do think that it is more than just about one organization being the all end all. I think that it is a collective. I mean, I know that Black Voter Matters is in Mississippi. Maybe it's their job to make sure that the people get to the polls. Maybe it's the Black church's job and the NAACP job to make sure they have enough support at the hearing. You know what I'm saying? So I do think that as a not a monolithic, group of people, that we all have to figure out how to do this for our people collectively. And Michelle,
and the role of the NAACP has not changed. We still are committed to decision making and strategy, as has been mentioned. And today you can count on the NAACP, and often there are disagreements within the organization, but we're still on the line, marching to make sure strategy is implemented in the best interest of policy in this country in general, and particularly to make sure that those African Americans and other people of color are included in American society and do get to experience the American dream. That is our role, and we cannot abandon that role. And, by the way, this is my little NAACP plaque.
Okay.
Yeah, I want you to see, we have to dedicate ourselves. It used to be a time when the churches and the pastors would ask members of the church to consider joining the NAACP in our respective areas. And we still need to do that. We still need to be affiliated with the decisions we need to make to fight for equity, to fight for justice in our communities.
100%. And as we talk about the midterms, there are elections today happening in Mississippi for the Senate and the House, and they're saying race to watch is District 2. And then also in Georgia, there's a special election where at least 22 candidates are running for their chance to replace former Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was once, of course, as we know, a close ally to Trump in the deep red district. So it is a red district, but those are the two elections to watch as we continue to monitor the midterm elections. And we know what's at stake, and it is semi-control, or to either get back semi-control of this country, or to continue to let the Republicans and MAGA and the Trump clan run amok. That is what's on the table for this midterm election. So if you're in Georgia, if you're in Mississippi, know your polling plan, and also tell somebody, make sure that your family members are voting. Remind your family members, remind your neighbors, if you're at work, remind your co-workers, let them know what's at stake. And that it's time to vote. Michelle Madison says back in the 90s, Reverend Dr. Benjamin Chavis formed a summit that included several organizations. It was an effort to make mutual decisions with collective empowerment. Back in the day, we had some leaders that really understood the importance of, the times at hand. Those issues back in the 90s were different from those of today, but we all understood that it was important that we participate civically. And so hopefully we can do that today in Georgia and Mississippi.
Sure.
Okay, and let's talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The One Big Beautiful Bill has officially introduced an 80-hour per month work requirement for Medicaid recipients. So analysts from the CBC Foundation warn that Black Americans who are disproportionately represented in the low-wage service jobs with unstable hours are the highest risk of losing coverage. So once again, the Trump administration has set a bar that they know that Black folks are going to miss. And so now we have, this story on the rise with Black people losing their Medicaid benefits because they don't have this 80-hour per week threshold that this Trump administration has set.
Yes, and I think what is an alternative and how, in fact, can we respond to these policies that we think are unjust? To what agency can we go to register our complaints so that we can potentially have some other solutions implemented in this case?
Well, what are those agencies? What are those agencies? Like, what
They,
do you say to somebody that is on the brink of losing their Medicaid because they didn't meet that 80-hour threshold? Where do you send them?
Well, that is the question. And even then, as we look at politics, if it's the federal government and Trump is in control of all of it, what difference would it make to complain and file an appeal to the very same system? You know what I'm saying? So it
Mhm.
becomes hopeless in many regards because he is in charge of the federal system. But it's just unfortunate that we don't have a system that would allow us to file complaints against policies that we feel are unjust, such as this one.
So
Uh,
if you're in, so let's just say we're in California. Let's take the state of California, and this happens to somebody. What agency do they go to? Their county agency, their city agent? Who do they go to complain about this? Is it the city council meeting? Is it the county? Who do you go to? Where do you make this complaint? Is it your state assembly member? Is it
mhm,
your state senator? Who
mhm.
would you go to have some type of recourse if your benefits are snatched because you didn't work an 80-hour week, not because you didn't want to, because you couldn't find the work?
Right. Um, Medicaid, is it Medicaid or Medicare?
It is Medicaid.
Uh-huh. So we would go to whatever level of government that administers the program. But my point is that if it's the federal level of government, it still really does not give us the kind of objective review that will allow us to have some fairness in a new decision if in fact it's all influenced by Trump. There are many cases where, it's almost similar to filing it before the Supreme Court, and we know that the Supreme Court is over uh, influenced by conservative Republicans. And so, even though
Mhm.
we can go to the Supreme Court and file it, it's fruitless in many
Right.
regards. And we feel the same way administratively as we feel judicially in
Mhm.
terms of an alternative as to where to go. What we could do, and usually what happens in these cases, is we file a lawsuit and we go to court. And again, when we go to court, we're ultimately dealing with the Supreme Court, all of whom have been influenced primarily from a conservative perspective with the Republicans who've appointed the majority of them. And
Mhm.
we just have to continue to fight. I mean, this has been the legacy that we have had in seeking justice. We've had to continue to fight. We see a seesaw between public policy on affirmative action or them feeling that something that has increased inclusion is a so-called preferential treatment. And you keep on until, unfortunately, we have an opportunity to fight uh, again. But, as long as the Republicans are in charge, it doesn't give us a fair hearing. So we keep fighting until the complexion of the body changes. I don't know. We talked about expanding the Supreme Court, putting more people on it, which would give us perhaps an opportunity for more fairness than we currently have. Uh, that is something that never really was seriously pursued, but it was talked about. But again, if we look at history, we keep fighting until we have an opportunity. All of the gains made in the civil rights movement were different than the Jim Crow that preceded it. And so we kept fighting, we kept fighting. So now we see a reverse of all of
Mhm.
those affirmative action gains that we made from civil rights, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then Congress, even in 1987, implemented a civil rights law that compelled governments to follow federal law if they receive any federal money in any place within that organization. So again, it is a consistent fight until such time you can see hope that there could be a fresh decision, and we have no other
Right.
option but to do it.
Right. So, Miss Lady, 3094 says, so there is no solution to what you're saying. It's just, we got to keep fighting till we win.
Right,
but
in
there
the
is
sense
no
that you're right.
solution.
We go to the Supreme Court for a decision, and it's a conservative court. We
Mhm.
assume that it's going to be a conservative decision that's not going to hear us. Now, every once in a while we'll get, as you have seen in some of the Supreme Court decisions, they will overturn on occasion something that Trump has done. But more
Mhm.
likely than not, they're going to agree 99% with it. But there may be a chance that they feel is so egregious that they will take that 1% and disagree. But
Mhm.
hopefully we can create an environment that is much more fair than we currently experience. We have Trump in charge of the federal government. We have a conservative judiciary as well. And so then we have a legislative branch that also is majority Republican. So
And the
three levels
Supreme
of
Court,
government,
yeah.
all of which are influenced overwhelmingly by the conservative influence in this country. So where does
So,
that leave
so
us?
that leaves us in, on state levels to where you have progressive or blue
Yeah.
states that can kind of,
Yes.
have some type of recourse or alternative to what is happening on a federal level. It's so
Sure.
amazing how things have flipped. During
Right.
civil rights times, we needed the federal government to supersede the states because the
Sure.
states were disenfranchising us. Now it's the reverse. You need to
Mhm.
have strong states to go
Mhm.
against what the federal government is doing
Mm,
to us,
mhm,
which is
mhm, mhm, mhm,
wild.
mhm,
But we talked a
mhm.
little bit about the 250th anniversary. And this year, part of American history is the first presidential library by a Black president. And so George W. Bush has been invited to the opening of the Obama Presidential Center.
Mhm.
So much like his legendary 2008 presidential campaign, Obama continues to push the narrative of hope to the American people, highlighting the feeling visitors may feel upon arrival. Now, the opening ceremony is scheduled to take place on June 18th, with the public opening scheduled for June 19th. People reported that the guest list included former President George W. Bush, but not President Donald Trump.
Hmm. And so
So,
this is the list of Obama in terms of who he has put on the list. Okay.
yeah, and Trump isn't on the list, of course.
All right.
But I think that this was strategically done. There's no coincidence that, the Obamas decided to do this on Juneteenth.
Yes.
And the historical context of what that day means to Black folks. And the Jubilee celebration that I think we all will feel,
Mhm.
because this is just not your ordinary presidential library. This is the
Mhm.
library of the first Black president, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying, on the
Absolutely.
south side of Chicago. Okay.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so people will come far and near.
Sure.
And I think that it is going to trump whatever Donald Trump has planned for July 4th. Okay. That
Mhm.
mass uh display of just stupidness that he has planned with that wrestling match on the lawn of the White House, which is just totally ridiculous. But when you think about what he has planned for the 4th of July and what Obama has planned for Juneteenth as we celebrate 250 years, I mean, thank God for a little balance.
Yes. Absolutely. And I'm reminded of the audacity of hope, and I'm reminded of keep hope alive.
Mm,
Hope is the connecting value between both leaderships of Jesse Jackson's run in the Democratic Party and Obama's win. And again, this is something that Isaiah Thomas brought up, is that all of the work that Jesse did, even though he did not win, drew the line to allow us to experience what it was that brought the two efforts together. And it
right.
was hope. It was hope. It was the
It was
audacity
hope.
of hope. And it was keeping hope alive. And we
That's right.
kept it alive until such time that the audacity of hope came to the table.
Mm, mm. which was a sermon written by Jeremiah Wright. Obama tells the story of how that book was inspired by a sermon, because the Obamas attended Reverend Jeremiah Wright's church.
Yes.
And so that book, The Audacity of Hope, was inspired by a sermon by the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. And I think it's important that we remember these people, especially when you think about how, Reverend Jeremiah Wright wasn't invited to the White House, and neither was the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, because of their controversial approach to speaking to times such as this. But then you look at somebody like a Steve Bannon, and you look at like members of the KKK that have open access to the White House now. And there's no judgment. There's no critical race theory thinking about letting those Klansmen in the White House, those white supremacists in the White House. But you have people, Black folks, that were really speaking to the times and truth to power and for Black empowerment. And Obama had to distance himself from these people, for protocol purposes and to keep them out. But then you got this white Klansman in the office now, and he's able to let anybody into the White House and it goes unchecked. It's just unbelievable.
That's a great point. And there's truly a difference in terms of values and what people are judged by. On one hand, Barack could not allow himself to surround himself with that kind of controversy, and on the other hand, it's celebrated by Trump.
Right. I wonder, in hindsight, though, I hope as the years go that we'll really get to think, feel, and see some of the things that Obama says that he might have done differently in hindsight when he looks back. Because a lot of times when you're in it, you can't see that far. But now in hindsight, and you look at the state of our nation now and what's acceptable and what might have been afraid, what they might have been afraid to do, in hindsight, does he regret some things? Sure. I can't wait to where he gets past the library and he's able to have those transparent conversations like, maybe I should have painted the green room black. Maybe I should have painted the red room red, black, and green. You know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. Like maybe, because Trump just tore down the West Wing, okay? And it's still crumbs, big slabs of concrete on the ground. So I can't wait till he gets to that moment to where he doesn't care and he can be a lot more transparent and give us some hindsight stuff.
And it also reminds us that there is two standards, two sets of rules for the same people depending upon their experience. And so for us, it's always been different. We were not able to do what a Trump can do, and it feeds right into what America is.
Right, 100%. Let's lighten things up and let's head to Georgia, where there is an election today. I don't think everybody needs to vote because it's a special election for Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat. But nevertheless, if you're in her district, make sure you head to the polls and you vote.
There's a young African-American man running for that seat too, isn't it? Or is it still?
Is he Republican or Democrat? Because that's red territory. So
yes,
we'll have to take a look at that and see what happens tomorrow. But let's head to Atlanta. Okay, so yesterday, Mike, we talked about Magic City at the Atlanta Hawks game. And so it was a big controversy. You had several hip hop artists like T.I. was supposed to perform. I know a lot of the artists were saying this is a cultural moment, but the NBA stepped in, and said, I'm sorry, Atlanta Hawks, but we're going to have to cancel this. So the NBA has canceled the Atlanta Hawks plans for a celebration of the city's Magic City Strip Club, saying that it was responding to concerns from many across the league. Now, the event was supposed to happen on March 16th during a game against the Orlando Magic. Get it? Orlando Magic, Magic City. But they did say that there will be no strippers, but it was just a celebration of such a cultural institution as it relates to hip hop. Now, we're not saying that Magic City is a institution, but it is a cultural Black institution. When you think of the 90s hip hop, when you think of just a time in the 90s. And so I think that's what they were trying to celebrate, but I guess the masses wasn't feeling it. I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, it is in fact an institution, but here comes
Your
a
club is an
choice.
institution.
Magic City is.
Magic
It
City, yeah.
is.
Okay.
But here's the
I agree.
question. Is it appropriate for what we're doing? Do we know what the environment is that we are trying to advance this? And as we talked about decision making on this very show, what kind of decision are we making? Did we know that Georgia and other states are a part of what we call the Bible Belt? And if you knew that, are you surprised that you got this kind of reaction when you knew that this was the Bible Belt?
I haven't
So
heard the
speaking,
Bible Belt in a while.
oh, well, that's where we are. That's the Bible Belt. So now you get this response and rebuff. Why are you surprised? It has a lot to do with decision making. And from the very beginning, had we been reminded, speaking of strategy, had we been reminded of where we were, would we have even tried to implement such a plan in the first place? When we talk about strategy. And so, no, I'm not surprised, and neither should anyone else if they knew where they were. Sometimes we forget where we are.
That's true. And I think too, like even you saying that that's a generational conversation, because I'm sure that Jermaine Dupri and T.I. wasn't thinking about no Bible Belt.
Well,
You know what
but
I'm
you need to
saying?
think about it, though. You
And
need
they
to.
wouldn't think about no Bible Belt.
Okay. Well, hey, that's what happens in decision making. When you don't think about it, then you get surprised.
So Orange G says the Bible Belt in the Deep South is alive and well. We call it plantation Christianity.
Right.
So
but
I
my
mean, I
thing
think
is,
that's a
no,
good point. I think that's a good point. Is that whole concept of the Bible Belt, is that a Black thing? Is that a white thing? Or is that just a faith thing?
it is a regional thing in this country in general. The South is seen, Black and or white, as a more conservative area of this country. It is not New York. It is not Los Angeles. Now, I will admit, Atlanta is perhaps the most progressive Southern city in America. However, it still is in the middle of the Bible Belt. So therefore, all these things in decision making are critical. I think we don't spend enough time in decision making, because this is something should have been discussed before we made that decision, right? And so here we are. They don't want it, and we know why they don't.
But here's the thing. The Atlanta Hawks was 10 toes down for it. The NBA stepped in.
Yeah.
And the NBA is not Bible Belt. They're national. They stepped in and said, well, maybe the other Bible Belt states said that's not appropriate.
Well, just as you and I just discussed, how can we appeal? People who are part of the Bible Belt know how to appeal. This was not a government issue. It was an NBA issue. And guess what? The governing body of the NBA is the NBA itself. So while we were at the local level in Georgia trying to implement it, they went straight to the governing body, the NBA itself, and called it off. Right?
Right. Well, we know where the after party is going to be on the 16th.
Right.
Have the after party at Magic City. Okay.
Right.
Have all the players,
And now
everybody that wants to
strategy.
celebrate, go to Magic City.
Making. That's strategy and decision.
Go tip the girls, because they probably would prefer you to come there and be there so they can make their money than be at the basketball game. So
I would say that's a better thought out strategy.
Well, there you have it. And then let's head to New Orleans, where there's been a lot of controversy about the Essence Fest, about they owe this much money to the city of New Orleans. But nevertheless, the Essence Festival is happening this year. And the first wave of artists for the 2026 Festival of Culture has been announced. So the headliners announced so far is Cardi B. She's going to make her debut. Right. She'll be joined by R&B icons Brandy and Monica.
Oh, wonderful.
You have Patti LaBelle,
Oh, wow.
Lotto, and Kehlani.
Right.
So that's the first rollout of artists that they have. And it's a mixture, there's been a
Right.
lot of talk and a lot of controversy, especially last year. You had the aunties versus the Gen Zers, and the aunties was like, this is not y'all's festival. I really need y'all to exit the building. And so to have somebody like a Cardi B, be the headliner, and Essence Fest is starting off with Cardi B. It seems like they are beginning to cater to a younger base. And it'll be interesting to know how Gen Xers like myself respond, because Essence Fest started with Gen X. That was the first Essence Fest. And as we got older, we grew with the festival. And then our kids and our nieces and nephews started hearing about how much fun we had. Now they want to come to the party, and the aunties and the uncles, it's like, y'all cause too much trouble. But it seems like Essence is like, look, this is where the base is. This is where our new attendees are coming from, and so y'all just need to make space.
Well, I think the Essence Festival, it has a rich legacy, and it's an outstanding festival. And I think that over time we can look back with pride on the programs that have been implemented there. I remember having heard about Frankie Beverly and Mays being there. Whether or not you heard about it, I remember Luther Vandross breaking out, and of course Patty has been a reoccurring dynamic role. But I also believe that the city of New Orleans must begin to support the Essence Festival and ought to do everything it can to make it a success. It is the location, New Orleans. It's a national phenomena, and they ought to make sure that it's successful every year. It's a focus on Black women who are the corner and the center of our life and experiences. So I think that New Orleans needs to get behind the Essence Festival to ensure that it's a continued success. They've done a great job by themselves, but my point is they should not be by themselves. It needs to continue. It's a wonderful program with a rich legacy of success. And there's no reason why it should be made a problem when in fact it is really an asset culturally to who we are, not only in New Orleans, but in this country. It is one of our most famous, most popular festivals annually.
Yeah, and shout out to Susan Taylor, who was instrumental with the inception of the Essence Fest. And when we talk about passing the baton, she passed the baton on to the next generation of leadership of Essence. But we cannot forget to give Susan Taylor her flowers for providing this experience that you just talked about, and all of the legacy from Frankie Beverly to Luther Vandross to Anita Baker to Janet Jackson to New Edition to Mary J. Blige. I was able to go to the first Essence Fest, and it was Frankie Beverly and Mary J. Blige. Those two acts have been like, Coke to the cola. When you think about Essence Fest. And so, yes, some wonderful experiences, and just a great way to exemplify, the power of Black women. The rise of Black women was birthed through Essence magazine. You know what I'm saying? The power to see ourselves.
Great publication.
Susan Taylor, remember when she used to do those letters in the beginning? I mean, I know Black women was like, okay, that was one of the things that you got Essence magazine for, was to see what Susan Taylor was going to talk to us about. And so when you think of Essence, you think about all of these things. And so it is, somebody in the chat said, did they pay those people their money? Well, something was worked out, because I don't think New Orleans would have them there if, and they might still owe the money. But I mean, I think it's to point out that Essence Fest isn't probably the only, and Mike, you could talk about this when organizations or, publications or for-profit have conventions in cities.
Right.
Is
Right.
it common that if they do something, like let's just say they have something at the convention center here in LA, and like
Mm-hmm.
the LA Automotive, the car
Sure.
the car festival,
Sure. The car show.
and so they have that every year. I mean, are their bills always paid at the end, or sometimes do they roll over? I mean, is
What I
that
would like to see,
uncommon?
and it happens on certain specific projects. I'd like to see the City Council of New Orleans get behind the Essence Festival.
But they
I'd like
do.
to
They
see, I'd
do.
like to see the Legislative Black Caucus of Louisiana get behind
Oh,
the
that's a great
Essence
point.
Festival. And when they get behind it, some of the businesses would be behind it as well. And it should always be in the black because they are behind it. It's a wonderful legacy event, and they need to get behind it. And so, yeah, there are projects where local governments and state governments get behind a project and make it successful. That's what ought to happen here. They have loyally been involved over the years, and there's no reason why they should get into a position after having demonstrated what a successful time this is, that they should not have the support of the area that they are implementing this wonderful dynamic project in New
Yeah, it's
Orleans.
similar to like what you're saying is city council get behind it. It's similar like to what happens here with Taste of Soul,
Right.
which is a
We get
huge
behind it.
city
Yeah,
festival
that's
in
right.
LA,
That's right.
brought on by our NNPA affiliate, the Los Angeles Sentinel, Danny Bakewell
Absolutely. It's a
Sr.,
wonderful
20 years.
national event. And it's almost
And
international. It's almost
right, the
international now.
city gets involved, city
Yes,
council
yes.
supports it,
That's
state
right.
supports it.
That's right. It's the
And
preeminent block party, period.
yes,
And
and it's
probably the
free.
biggest in this country.
And it's
Uh,
all free, and for the
yeah,
most part, outside of the concerts in
right,
New Orleans, Essence Fest is pretty much free,
right,
when you go to the convention center and
right,
things like that. So,
right,
yeah, I
right.
think that that is a great model. And because this year is a midterm election, you can
Mm-hmm.
expect to see a lot of candidates,
Right. Mm-hmm. I'd
you
love to see the
know.
city of New Orleans and the state legislature of Louisiana get behind, particularly the Black Caucus of the legislature, get behind the Essence Festival. It is a wonderful event, and it has survived all these years. No reason why we should allow it to not be successful.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also remember the role that Essence played for New Orleans, Black New Orleans in particular, after Hurricane Katrina, right? Remember the
Yes.
CARES initiative, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
And
correct.
so, I think that I agree with both of you. I think that we need to try to figure out whatever the issues are, but we need to support Black businesses, and especially, Essence Magazine,
Yes.
so, especially,
Yeah.
people specifically in our demographic, Neo, that that magazine and Susan Taylor's her monthly. I mean, we got that. We started off
Right.
with that, reading
Mhm.
that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how a lot of us, as we grew up, Susan Taylor's monthly thing, the inspirational thing, that's what got us reading Essence Magazine, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what brought in this generation of readers. But Essence has done some tremendous things for our community over the years, and I think we need to continue to support them as much as possible.
Right. Wonderful.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Madison says, I would like to see more corporations support the Essence Festival and BLACKPRESS. We support them. I mean, that is so true, but it's this whole concept of DEI. And what I'm seeing is that it's so easy for these corporations to begin to slip into a Donald Trump mindset. And so if they don't have to, what they're proving is they're not going to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just, so like all of the money that they gave, when George Floyd was murdered, it was a symbolic gesture, but the minute Donald Trump said you don't have to do it, they didn't do it. They're not doing it. And so it's just so easy. Like yesterday, you saw we did a story on Southwest Airlines testing to see if they're going to clean the entire plane now, or if they're only going to focus when they turn around. Like, sometimes they'll go from LA to DC 2 or 3 times. Well, what they're saying is that they're testing to where they're only going to clean first class and premium seats, and then the back of the plane, you might be sitting in somebody's mess, and they're okay with that. They're okay with
That's
that.
crazy.
That is crazy. They're okay, but it's like it's so easy for them to not. So to the point of support Black Press, support the Essence Festival, we need that support. And right now the support is coming from, people in the chat. It's coming. So tell your friends to like and subscribe, not only to Essence Fest, but to Black Press, to our morning show, so that we can keep talking about these stories. Because when you turn on the news now, it's almost like watching state TV.
And
You're
then
damn near watching state
also
TV now.
once again, our local leaders, you talked about what Trump can do. Well, what about a city council person in New Orleans? If you want to continue to do business in New Orleans, that city council person is important. So he has to, or she has to, stand up and say, this is a project that is important to our community. It's been here for a long time, and we want you to reinvest in it. This is the singular project, the same way with the legislature. And when they stand up, it doesn't matter what Trump's going to do, because we're talking about Louisiana, and we're talking about New Orleans, and we're talking about the local leaders. That is why they can't sit idly by and let this dissipate. They have to stand up, be assertive, and do something, and get some help from those people who are making their millions of dollars in New Orleans, millions of dollars in Louisiana, and they need to reinvest back into the institution that gives them their success economically.
So let's talk about, so you said that. So before we move on, I think this is an important part to talk about too, because we're having, kitchen counter table talk.
Right.
Orange G brings up a good point. Target and Shea Butter, who are not Black owned, are big sponsors, and they target the Black dollar, but they are not Black owned. I want to focus on of the Essence Fest, but I want to bring that up because that was a big issue last year, that Essence Fest took money from Target, knowing that we were in the middle of a Target boycott. So, we talk about, we want the support, we want the advertisement dollars to help us produce these events. But do you draw the line? If we're saying, if Black folks and Black leadership are saying we're boycotting Target, we're not going to Target, we're not taking their money, and then you have this festival and they offer you this money that you need to be able to produce and to pay for the Patti LaBelle's and the Cardi B's. As a Black community, do we take the money and produce the show for our people, or do we say, hey, we 10 toes down and we're not going to accept your money and we don't want you in our spaces?
What is leadership? What is leadership? If these leaders are leading and they don't want us to go to Target, what are they replacing it with? What we have here is a void of leadership. This is why over the last 10 minutes, we have been saying we want to see the city council behind this. We want to see the legislative Black caucus behind this, because they ain't been behind it to the degree that we expect. And if they had, then we wouldn't have these problems you're talking about. They would replace Target with another group that they've done the work on to come to get here to pay it. And they have not done that, period. And so what we're saying is we need local leadership to get behind the Essence Festival to make it a success. It's not just you're being the council person or the legislator. It's you're rolling up your sleeves and helping make it be a success.
Okay, so we'll continue to talk about the Essence Festival as they continue to roll out what to expect at this year's festival. But in sad news, Bernard Lafayette, civil rights strategist who helped pave the way for the Voting Rights Act, has died at the age of 85. And Martin Luther King Jr. III said that Lafayette was one of the great teachers of the nonviolence movement in our time. So today we acknowledge and remember the life, the legacy, and contributions to the Black experience of Bernard Lafayette. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not as familiar with him, but I do respect the work that he did, which was core to the Dr. Martin Luther King philosophy in terms of how we should run and operate the civil rights movement. He wanted to clearly be one of peaceful organizing, And so Mr. Lafayette's work was critically important to that effort.
Mm-hmm. And before we get out of here, we have a couple of Black facts. And because it's Women's Month, we decided to focus on women today. So the year is 1913. And on this day, the death of Harriet Tubman happened, of course, known as Moses of her people. She passed away in Auburn, New York, leaving behind a legacy of courage and resistance. So today we say the name of Harriet Tubman, and we remember her. And that's just it.
Wow, yes. What great work Harriet Tubman did over her lifetime. And it was, and still is, an inspiration to all of us on how we must be persistent, determined, and most of all, how we have to have courage if we're going to engage in the civil rights and if we're going to fight for justice and freedom. It does not have a shrinking violet to lead. It has to be a courageous leader, and she was that.
Right. And she was an abolitionist. And I think that it's important to remember that during that time, she was an abolitionist against slave catching. And when we look at policing in this country now, that's where policing derives from. It derives from slave catching. And so to be an abolitionist is to say no to that type of behavior. So when we hear the terms like police sanctioned violence, state sanctioned violence, federal sanctioned violence, all of that stems from slave catching. And Harriet Tubman was an abolitionist against all of that. So it's something to consider and put into perspective. And last but not least, where are all my Black sisters at? Because they did it for me. I'm not working today. Today is National Day of Rest for Black women. Okay. Now the observance also often aligns with March 10th and encourages Black women to prioritize self-care and rest as a form of resistance against systemic burnout. So I'm going to take today, I'm taking a self-care mental health day. It didn't take much. Now, is there a Black man's National Day of Rest? Have you heard of it, Mike?
A Black man's net? I've not heard of a Black man's Day of Rest. Is there?
Y'all need one. Y'all need one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know of one.
Get with the city council, get with the state legislators and the Congress and tell them y'all need one too. If Black women can have a National Day of Rest, you should too.
Okay, good. Give it to us for sure.
All right. Thanks for joining us again, Mike. And of course, we love having you on. We're going to try and make this a weekly thing because there's a lot to talk about. We definitely want to talk about next week, the California governor's race. I definitely want to take a deep dive in that. Okay. I heard through the grapevine last night that the California Democratic Party is going to do some polling about the election and what people are looking for. And this polling is going to be led by a Black woman here in LA.
Oh, wow.
And so I think the announcement happens today. Rusty Hicks is making an announcement about it today. So definitely want to talk about that next week. So thank you for joining us. And don't forget, folks, for the latest in Black news, you can head over to blackpressusa.com and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much.